You're welcome back. Well, Nigeria's total public debt stock, which is domestic and external debt stock of federal government, 36 state governments, and the Federal Capital Territory has hit 42.84 trillion naira. That's about $103.31 billion. That's for June 2022. This indicates a 1.24 trillion naira increase from what it was in March 2022. At that point, it was 41.60 trillion naira, and the data was released by the Debt Management Office, so we can be sure that it's correct data. Well, what does it mean for Nigeria incurring over $1 trillion naira in 3 months? We have Mr. Marcel Okeke, he's former chief economist with Zenith Bank PLC. Good morning, Mr. Okeke. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Good morning to you, and thank you for having me this time.
All right, so we see there's been an increase between June and March, an increase of 1.24 trillion naira. Should we be worried? Is that normal?
Thank you very much for this question. Yes, we should be worried. It is not normal, because when you look at the antecedent and where we are coming from, normally we say in economics that borrowing is not the problem per se, but how you deploy the money you have borrowed. To what end? What do you use it to do? When we look at the Nigerian situation, you find out that we're already borrowing to be funding consumption. Okay? We have been borrowing to even pay civil servants' salaries. So to now continue to borrow more in that direction, and for a government that's almost rounding up, we are worried. We are worried. Already, what we are spending to service debt is much more than our revenue. So it's like we're living on borrowed time as a country. So we are worried.
Okay, so I think you alluded to it. We do know that subsidy also gobs a huge part of this money, even though I think a lot of times when we get the news that the government is going to borrow, it's always connected to infrastructural development. But it seems like it's more about subsidy and some other consumables.
You have said it. It's about subsidy and some other consumables. And I have said it. If really he has been borrowing for real physical infrastructure development, for instance, government can borrow and use it to construct roads and maybe put tolls or toll gates along those roads, so that over time, the money is recovered and what is coming in will be able to service the debt and pay up at the end of the day. But this one that we are borrowing for consumption, I mean, it is a journey to nowhere. It's a dangerous journey, really. You know, it's a dangerous journey we are taking by borrowing more all the time.
Yeah, and it looks like we're going to actually borrow more, because next year's budget, 2023, is supposed to be 19.76 trillion. And it has a deficit of over 11 trillion. And out of that, about 6 trillion is a gain to subsidy. Can we really escape this cycle?
Thank you for this question. You know, this borrowing spree and the humongous debt outstanding, to some extent, is self-imposed. It's self-imposed. Because you ask yourself, for example, this issue of infrastructure development and all that, who set target for who? The government decides what infrastructure to build at every point in time as we speak. So as a government that has few months to leave, must we be shouting infrastructure and now borrow, Nigeria will borrow itself to debt, for example, you know? So talking about the figures we are putting, it means that running that budget, that I believe, will be announced early October, will cause a lot of distortions in the economy, because like it's been causing, especially this year and a few years ago, when government becomes a major player, in the market for raising funds, okay, where the government will be borrowing domestically and crowding out private sector operators, and hiking the interest rate because of government activities, and then borrowing from anywhere and everywhere on the surface of the earth, And when this is being borrowed, it means a lot is being left, a lot of debt is being accumulated, even for the government that will take over next year, always being important. So the government will again raising 11 or over 11 trillion from this economy or from wherever is really not going to be easy. Okay, it's the future of the country that's already mortgaged, So really, there's cause for worry, like we started. There's cause for worry. There's cause for worry. If I were to be in government or part of the government, I will advise that certain things be stepped down. A government that has a tenure of 8 years and has done 7 years plus, remaining a few months to go. Why overstretch things like this? To keep borrowing and borrowing and borrowing so that, the panic is everywhere. Okay? They talk about the revenue being shortfall and all that. Why will it be suddenly discovered? In economics, the long term is very important. So you don't do things on a short-termism basis. Just like the presidential committee on the economy that the president had just set up to be the chairman of that committee. For so many of us outside, that is not necessary. It's a panic measure. More so when the president himself will be the chairman of that committee. The president is also the minister of petroleum resources. The president is also the commander-in-chief. So how is he going to function? In all of this, okay? And so meaning that all those committees on the economy or economic management team in the past close to 8 years have not been functioning well, except he takes over as the chairman of the committee that he set up. So really that's cause to worry. It shows that it's like the government is at its wit's end, honestly. Thank you.
So you would suggest that there should be a reconsideration of the components of the 2023 budget, perhaps to reduce the cost so that they don't need to borrow up to this 11 trillion naira.
That is the point, perfectly. I mean, nothing is cast in stone, Certain things were put together to arrive at those figures, that is flying everywhere, that are flying everywhere. So somebody can sit somewhere and adjust them. Are they playing to the gallery? Who are they trying to satisfy? If the verdict is that the government has not been doing well now, if it is the verdict of the people that the government has not been doing well, is it within a few months that they will now perform a miracle? So I don't know who they are trying to satisfy. In the interest of Nigeria today and Nigeria of tomorrow, I mean, this government should be winding down, mentioning those figures, and going ahead to begin to raise, loans to meet those targets that they set for themselves. Will be a lot of distortion on the economy. It's going to displace a lot of people who also are looking for funds to run their businesses. Let me not go into the issue of insecurity in the land. That's already an existential threat.
So with this increasing debt, and of course now we have already surpassed, our debt servicing has surpassed our revenue. What impact is it having on Nigerians? How is it affecting Nigerians?
The impacts are so many and enormous. Because these debts we are talking about have the local and external components. There's also the ways and means, money government takes directly from the Central Bank of Nigeria, operating of money, which is about 20 trillion as we speak. That one has also violated all the rules and regulations guiding CBN printing money. And so when you are raising loan from the global economy or global financial market and raising from the local market, one is that by government operating so seriously and so deeply in the local market, is displacing so many private sector operators who need these funds. That is one. Two is that because of the condition of our economy and how much our debt is already outstanding, those who are giving us loans abroad, are no longer comfortable giving us. Instead of getting the loans at a certain interest rate, our own rate will be hiked for us because they have assessed the the risk, in the Nigerian economy, and so meaning that the country is getting riskier, a place to as people to lend money to. Okay, and in the eyes of the Committee of Nations or international community, uh, the signal we are sending out, the more we borrow, the signal we are sending out is that really all is not well with the economy. And so when government, portions so much of its income to debt servicing, what will be left to run the economy the way it should be run? That is why even now we're also borrowing to pay salaries, to public servants. So it has gotten that bad, and the more we borrow, we're exposed to debt, and the more we portion the resources to service that debt, like I said, the other urgent demands, are neglected locally. Okay, because even the infrastructure you're talking about, it has become a mere sing-song. Because if you look at it, you see that so much of the money that is borrowed find their way into various private pockets, and that's the level of corruption. Until such humongous stolen funds are discovered, nobody will know that so much of it has gone into private pocket. I don't want to mention this, but at least it's alleged that they removed the Accountant General of the Federation. Took so billions, hundreds of billions. The other one, so many of them like that, being dealt with by EFCC. So really, the money that's being borrowed, are they being deployed into infrastructure development? If you hear this kind of amount and they have actually been deployed to infrastructure, Nigeria would have been heaven on earth by now. So really, let the government focus on winding down. The volume of debt and servicing it is already injurious to the economy.
All right,
Thank you.
Mr. Marcel Okeke, former chief economist with Zenith Bank PLC. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us this morning.
And thank you very much for having me.